All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So first off, such a warm welcome to UC San Diego. Congratulations on your admittance, accepting your admission, and kind of starting these next steps in terms of transitioning your life into this next chapter. We're so excited to have you join us. These pre-arrival webinars are in partnership with the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs. You'll soon find that UC San Diego is a very large campus with many different offices and lots of great campus partners. So we try our best and pride ourselves in working really collaboratively across campus to bring together different folks who can assist you in your journey. And with that, we have so many wonderful campus partners represented here today. So my name is Grace Fuller. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as the Interim Assistant Director of International Experience and Engagement over at the International Services and Engagement Office, also referred to as ISEO. And I'll hand it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves. So over to you, Shauna.
Thank you, Grace. Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to be welcoming you to the UC San Diego community. My name is Shauna Slabiota. I also use pronouns she and hers. I work in the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs. We usually refer to ourselves as GEPA. And part of my role is organizing welcome activities for new graduate students. So we will have additional opportunities to get to know each other as we prepare for the next academic year. And I will pass it to Jessica.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica. I work at Extended Studies in the International Programs, and I'm responsible for administering the ELCE, the English Language Certification Exam for teaching assistants. So I'll be telling you a little bit more about that process today. I'll hand it over to Erilyn.
Hi, all. My name is Erilyn Heinrichsen. I use the pronoun she, her, hers, and I'm the Assistant Director of Engaged Teaching in the Teaching and Learning Commons. We will, along with my colleagues Sarah and Minju, be sharing a little bit about what we have to offer and what you can expect when you both apply for and get a TA-ship at UC San Diego. And we look forward to working with you. Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Carvalho. I also work in Engaged Teaching, which is part of the Teaching and Learning Commons, and I administer the Language and Teaching Development Program, and I welcome all of you. I'll pass it over to Minju.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Minju Kim. My pronouns are she or hers. I am a postdoctoral scholar at Engaged Teaching with Sarah and Erilyn. I actually was a graduate student myself in the psychologist department, so I was always listening to this webinar, and I want to warmly welcome you all, and would love to share how I learned a lot from Engaged Teaching.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So I just want to thank my co-presenters today for lending their time and their expertise and for being here to present this webinar. All right, so a little snapshot of how we'll spend our time together today. And we do have a few reminders from graduate admissions. Then we'll go into English proficiency requirements for teaching assistants. Next, we'll transition to support for our instructional assistants on campus. We'll end with upcoming webinars and additional resources. And as always, we do have dedicated time at the end for open question and answer. So a little bit of housekeeping. You are in listen-only mode, meaning you can hear us, but unfortunately we can't hear you. So the main way we'll interact together during today's webinar will be through that Q&A feature on your Zoom menu bar. If for some reason we don't get to your question, please know you can always contact us at icontact.ucsd.edu. And finally, we are recording, so you'll be able to view this webinar recording as well as all other previous webinar recordings at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. It usually takes our team about a week's time in order to edit the video and upload it to our site, and then you should be able to access it from there. This is just a screenshot of what that Zoom Q&A feature might look like if you haven't used it before. Please know that, again, we do have dedicated time at the end, so we might wait to answer certain questions until the end of today's webinar, especially if we might end up answering it within the content of our presentation. However, I myself know that sometimes I have a burning question and I'm afraid to forget it. So you can always submit that question throughout today's presentation. We will have different folks monitoring the Q&A, but then we will also have that dedicated time at the end. Okay, and so with that, we'll go over some first steps checklists with graduate admission reminders.
Thank you, Grace. So I just really want to spend a few minutes talking about the graduate application portal. And you're probably familiar with your portal by now. This is where you would have checked the status of your application and you'd be able to see where things are moving along. I'm also going to show a screenshot in a moment so we can also kind of revisit that. But what I want you to pay attention to right now is your list of to-do items. And this may include the statement of legal residence form. It's not required for all programs, but if it is showing as a to-do in your portal, it is really key that you submit that form. And again, your portal is personalized to you. So you want to go in there, check to see what your to-dos are. You might not have that, that's fine. But we really want you to be able to just know everything that is due and everything that has to be submitted for your admission. Because most students at this time are provisionally admitted, and that just means that you have to submit perhaps an official transcript or official test scores. There's something else that we need in order to be able to finalize your admission. We do like to remind folks that you can't start the process of getting your I-20 or your DS 2019 or your visa documentation, even though you're provisionally admitted. So please don't let that stop you. And if you have any questions about your application or any of the documentation, please email gradadmissions@ucsd.edu and our staff will assist. So this is the screenshot of the portal that I just mentioned. And I also want to say that if you are entering a program at the Rady School of Management, your portal might look a little different. But in general, what I want you to do when you log in, so the screen on the left hand side of the screen, that's showing what your home page looks like. You can see what your status is. And at the bottom, you can see what forms need to be complete and if they've been completed. The right hand side of the screen has where you would go to check to see your checklist items. So this is an example of somebody who has required documents that need to be submitted. There's also instructions here on how you can submit those final transcripts if you need to do that. So check your portal, know what's in there, and take care of all your to-do items. And then, so this is, I'm sort of shifting a little bit into the topic of today's webinar, where we are really focusing on the instructional assistant role. But just to provide a little bit of information first, we had a session earlier this week where we talked more broadly about graduate student funding and how that would look a little different, perhaps, than what you experienced in undergrad. And when we are talking about students who work as employees on our campus, many times we're talking about graduate student researchers or academic student employees. So I just want to put in a little plug here that if you have questions about graduate employment or the researcher position, I really encourage you to check out the GEPA website because there's a lot of information there. And I'll let my colleagues talk more about the ASE role and instructional assistants.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shauna. And as Shauna mentioned, so we do highly encourage you to begin your process of requesting your Form I-20 for the F1 visa and DS 2019 for the J1 visa now. So you can go to inewdegreestudent.ucsd.edu, and that's where you can begin that process. We did our first two webinars went into quite a bit of detail on that step by step. So our first webinar went into detail about how to request your Form I-20 or DS 2019 and the proper complete application for doing so. And then our next webinar, applying for a US visa, went into detail about once you have the Form I-20 or DS 2019, how do you actually then apply for your F1 or your J1 visa? So the webinars are great. The website is also a lovely, helpful resource, and it kind of breaks it down step by step. So I just like to always remind folks that hopefully you have already requested your Form I-20 or DS 2019, and then we have these additional resources for you all. Something else that I always like to mention is a common issue. We'll have students reach out to our office saying they can't access something like iServices or another portal here on campus. And oftentimes the reason is because they haven't quite set up their required accounts yet. So just as a friendly reminder, once you accept your admission to UC San Diego, you will be assigned a PID or a personal identification number. Now, it's important to note that it may take 72 hours up to a week to generate your PID. So if you have recently accepted your offer admission, please do give that some time. But then once you've assigned that, you will then go and set up your password for your PID. That login will be needed for resources such as class registration, financial tools, etc. The other login that you'll use a lot during your time at UC San Diego will be your UCSD email and your Active Directory. So we do have a section on our website, inewdegreestudent.ucsd.edu, that goes into a lot of detail about setting up these required accounts and kind of a step-by-step process. And if it does apply to you, like Shauna mentioned in the application portal, please make sure you're also filling out that statement of legal residence. Those are some key pieces in order to be able to continue with some of these next steps that we talk about. All right, and with that, I will go ahead and hand it over so we can talk a little bit more about English language requirements for teaching assistants. Over to you, Jessica.
Hi, thank you. So through the Division of Extended Studies International Programs, I administer an English language session, an English language test for teaching assistants. So let me explain a little bit more about why that might be needed and how you might be exempt or what process you would need to go through if you're not exempt. So the English proficiency for teaching assistants policy is a policy of the grad division, and it states that all international grad students are required to demonstrate a high level of competence in the English language, especially in their fluency, oral and oral fluency. This is a condition of employment as a TA. So when a department hires you, it's their responsibility to ensure that their teaching assistants have the required English language proficiency in order to hire you for that position. So I'll explain kind of step by step how you might go about getting a teaching assistant position or trying to get a teaching assistant position and how the ELCE might play a role in that. Your first step would be to apply to a teaching assistant position through the hiring department. The hiring department may or may not be your home department or home program. That department will check your application and determine if you need the ELCE. And sometimes I consult and help to figure out if a student is exempt or not. So the next slide here shows some ways that you might meet the English language proficiency requirement. So the three ways you can meet the requirement is if you have already submitted a speaking score that is high enough, and I'll explain what that means. That might be a TOEFL, IELTS, or Pearson Test of English score. The yellow box there states that if a teaching assistant applicant holds a degree from an institution where English is the only medium of instruction and they maintained a GPA of 3.0 or higher, the way to prove that is through transcripts, degree records from a US institution where English is the only medium of instruction, or by going on the World Higher Education database and checking if your university is listed there with English as the sole language of instruction. The third option to fulfill the English proficiency requirement is to take the ELCE with us. So let me go through these blue boxes a little bit more detail. The way to show a sufficient speaking score, sufficiently high speaking score, might be on the three tests, excuse me. If I could have the next slide. Your score might be from the TOEFL speaking section, the IELTS speaking section, or the Pearson Test of English. And you can see the score ranges there, 26 or higher, 8 or higher, 84 or higher. If your score is at that level, then you are not required to prove English proficiency. Those scores are going to exempt you from any other requirements. If your score is below those cutoffs, then you are required to take the English language certification exam. But it's not that simple. We only test students using the English language certification exam with very narrow score ranges. So a TOEFL speaking score of 23 to 25, an IELTS speaking score of 7 to 7.5, and a Pearson Test of English speaking score of 66 to 83. If your scores are lower than that, those scores indicate that further fluency work is needed. And so students must submit proof of practicing taking a course. An example might be an ESL course from Extended Studies, International Programs. We have an ESL department. We have courses that focus on communication and speaking skills. So we would ask that students participate in a course and submit proof before we would confirm an ELCE session for those students. So we come to our next steps. If you need this test, if the department determines where your scores are, that you're not exempt, then the hiring department will request an ELCE date and time on behalf of the student. Students do not directly schedule ELCE sessions, and that's because the department is involved in these sessions. It's their hiring decision, and I'm helping them to check that you fulfilled the requirements before they hire you. So the ELCE session takes place on Zoom once it's scheduled. And on the next slide, I have a little more detail about what it entails. The ELCE is an oral English proficiency test. It's assessed by a panel, including a linguist or a language assessment specialist and a faculty representative from the department that you've applied to TA in. It's about 15 minutes, a session administered on Zoom. It's an interview and teaching simulation. You don't have to prepare anything. It's just a check of your English language skills. I have a little bit about the structure down there. There's a little welcome section, then there's a warm-up and a technical portion where you will teach and use the board. These are foundational concepts from your field. This is not a test of your technical knowledge. We are not reassessing whether you are qualified for your grad program. We're just checking your English language skills. So I have a QR code there that links to our website where we have a few more details in our frequently asked questions page. What we're looking for on the ELCE is pronunciation, listening comprehension, your vocabulary usage, speech flow, excuse me, your grammatical accuracy, and your ability to organize ideas clearly. And we have 4 testing sessions throughout the year. The schedule is also posted on our website. I apologize, it looks like I didn't change the year on that last one, but we have the fall session starting August 18th to September 12th. That's our longest session. A December session that's a little bit shorter, 2 weeks. March session, again, two weeks, and then a June session. That should be June of 2026. that is 2 weeks. So depending on when you are looking to get a TA position and depending on when the department is checking your qualifications, they might request a session for you during one of these testing windows. We do not test outside of these testing windows. So finally, at the end of your ELCE session, a hiring recommendation is communicated to the hiring department. I send them a message, and later an individual score report is sent to the student. That's a document that you can take with you if you apply to a TA in other departments. You don't have to retake the ELCE once you've passed it. If necessary, someone from Teaching and Learning Commons might contact you to help you out with a concurrent course called Communication for Teaching. So let me explain what some of the outcomes of the ELCE might be and why you might have to work with TLC during your first quarter as a TA. On the next slide, I have the possible recommendations or the possible scores for the ELCE. You can see the green row there, we call a clear pass. It means the student is qualified to TA with no other requirements. The next one down is pass with conditional certification, where the student is cleared to act as a TA, but it's recommended that the student takes a concurrent support course through Teaching and Learning Commons. It could be taken in the session before starting a TA-ship or concurrently, but that is a requirement of employment as well. The next column down the next row down shows a provisional pass where the student can TA, will get support from Teaching and Learning Commons, and is required to test again to check for increased fluency. And then our last rows at the bottom are the did not pass recommendation, where students might be eligible for support from TLC, but would have to test again in order to be hired as a TA. So if you get a recommendation where the TLC course, Communication for Teaching, is a requirement, you're required to work with TLC. And the process for enrolling in that class is that our department, my team will send the scores directly to the language and teaching development staff at TLC, and they will contact you to enroll in the class. This is a class that does not appear on your official record, but it is required to participate as a TA, to be employed as a TA. So for a little more information on that, I'll hand it over to the TLC staff. But on my last slide here, I have another code and an encouragement to contact us at the International Teaching Assistant Program at Extended Studies if you have questions about ELC requirements. I'm happy to explain with more detail because I know everybody's situation is unique, coming from different places and applying to different departments. So I'm happy to consult with you if you have questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Jessica. Again, I'm Sarah Carvalho, and I'm here with my colleagues Erilyn and Minju to tell you about our work in the Teaching and Learning Commons in the hub called Engage Teaching and how we support graduate students in their teaching roles. So we've talked briefly about academic employment, and you were introduced to the term academic student employee, or ASE. An ASE is an employee of the university and also a student. So there are several types of ASEs at UCSD, and they're commonly referred to as instructional assistants, or IAs. By the way, you may notice that we use a lot of acronyms on this campus, like IA, TA. So if you're ever unsure about what a term means, please ask. So IA is a category that includes several job titles, including teaching assistants, instructional apprentices, tutors, and readers. A teaching assistant helps support undergraduate or graduate level courses under the supervision of a faculty member. We'll talk more about that work, but let me briefly introduce the other terms. An instructional apprentice is an undergraduate student who assists with undergraduate courses, so they may be part of your team. A tutor meets with students one-on-one or in small groups to help students understand course material. And a reader assists an instructor by grading homework or exams. They may also hold office hours. So let's go back to the teaching assistant. So a TA assists a faculty member in many ways. So a TA's responsibilities can differ greatly depending on your discipline and the type of class you're supporting. So TAs may conduct discussion sections or supervise lab sections. They may grade exams, essays, or projects. They may create homework problems or prepare quizzes, and they may hold office hours, either in person or virtually. Again, if you're unfamiliar with any of that terminology, please ask for clarification. So when you find out what your employment will be, and we often call that a TA assignment, you should talk to the instructor you'll be working with to clarify your responsibilities. So there may be an expectation for you to attend weekly lectures. You may have weekly team meetings, etc. All right, I will pass it over to Erilyn to tell you more about our work.
Yeah, so we just wanted to let you know, first of all, what the Teaching and Learning Commons is. The Teaching and Learning Commons is a really unique structure and unit on campus that actually has multiple different teams that are supporting both instructors and student success. So the ones that we're mentioning today is we're all working within the Engage Teaching Hub. So that side really supports instructors, both faculty and graduate student instructors who are teaching our undergraduates, especially on campus. We'll also later briefly mention the Writing Hub because that's just a great resource to know about as support for your writing as well. And I'll pass it back to Sarah to go into more.
Okay. So let's talk about a few of your goals and how to reach them. So in the next few months, as you are preparing for the possibility of working as a teaching assistant, it's a good idea to review key terms from your field in English. It's a good idea to practice explaining concepts from your field in English. So remember, as an instructor, you'll be explaining complex ideas to different audiences, including learners who do not share your background. So it's helpful to practice simplifying, rewording, giving examples, all good teaching practices. Another suggestion is to take a class with extended studies, as Jessica mentioned before. So Extended Studies English Language Institute offers courses that can help you with fluency building, pronunciation, presentation skills. These are all applicable to the teaching role. So please keep in mind that building your communication skills will help prepare you to work as a teaching assistant, but will also help you be more successful as a student and can contribute to your future professional growth. Okay, so you want to find a TA position. So when you're ready to find a TA position, apply through your department or the hiring department if you're going to teach for a different department. So reach out to the graduate coordinators. So they are the ones in the departments who hire TAs. If necessary, you'll take the ELCE, and the graduate coordinators, again, in the departments, are the ones who will sign you up to take the ELCE if necessary. And if required, you'll take the communication for teaching class with us. Also, participate in teaching training to stand out, and we'll tell you more about some of those options. So another goal for you can be to learn strategies to make teaching more efficient So you work smarter, not harder, and effective. So it will be better for your teaching experience and better for the learning experience of your students. So at Engage Teaching, we offer teaching workshops and consultations throughout the year, and we encourage you to join us. Erilyn's going to tell us more about that, but first, my colleague Minju would like to share some of her experiences with you.
Thank you, Sarah. Again, as a former international graduate student at UCSD, I learned so much from the resources and workshops from Engaged Teaching. When I was first teaching for a class that I was assigned to, I was worried about myself not sounding like a native English speaker. But as I attended the workshops at Engaged Teaching, I learned that I have the ability to actually structure how I communicate with my students. I also learned how to effectively support student learning and also stay happy as a TA myself, balancing research and teaching. And one thing I really benefited from learning from English teaching was actually learning about the classroom culture in the United States, because we only see in dramas or like shows, but really when you're interacting with students, then, oops, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, that was out. So when I interact with students, I learned how to speak in a more effective way. Because in Korean language, we say the important thing at the end, but in English, most of the time we bring it to the front. So even thinking about those structure really helped me. And also I got to practice more small talks with my students as well. In terms of job market, I found it really helpful to attend the workshops because often even faculty positions require a teaching philosophy statement or a teaching portfolio that asks for your student evaluations or syllabus that you have created. So I highly recommend taking the workshops in Engage Teaching to guide yourself through that process and also meet people who are on the same journey. So in a large university like UCSD, sometimes it can be hard to get advice on TA-ship, but I also met wonderful fellow graduate students that I could work with and share my concerns and ideas in teaching. So I highly recommend everyone attending the online IA symposium, which will be at the beginning of the fall quarter, to learn more about different workshops and resources that Engage Teaching. So I'll stop there and pass the mic to Erin.
Thanks, Minju, and thanks, Sarah. So as they've both mentioned, we have a range of teaching support available to you. So when you are first assigned a TA or an IA position, a instructional assistant position, you'll be automatically assigned to this online course for IAs. And this is not an actual course per se, as much as 4 online sort of mini workshops that will help introduce some key ideas around transitioning into a leadership role in the classroom. So from becoming a learner in the classroom to becoming the leader in the classroom. So that will be assigned to you as soon as you get an IA position. Your department will also have some training available to you to prepare you for your teaching role. In some departments, this might be a few workshops. It might be incorporated with other sort of training within the department. And in some departments, this is a full teaching or full course about teaching. And the other thing we wanted to mention as well is that each department has an IA faculty advisor. And this role as a faculty member who is their part of their role is to be a liaison for IAs. So they are there to help support you, make sure you get the right training. If you have questions, they're a great person to turn to, along with the graduate coordinator as well. Now, the Teaching and Learning Commons, of course, offers a number of resources, both online resources, workshops, pedagogy courses that are all free to you as a UCSD graduate student. And you can complete these at any time. So these might be things that you take, early on. It might be that you might take these once you get a TA position. It's really up to you and your timing. But these are really meant, as Sarah and Minju both mentioned, to help you have a more efficient and fun teaching experience. When you know how to teach, it's way more fun and way easier than when you're stumbling through it, as we've all done at some point. So if you should choose to teach your own course in the future, we also have support for you in preparing like a syllabus, preparing a course, learning how to be a future faculty member, essentially. And if you join us this fall, Minju mentioned the new IA teaching symposium that always falls in week 0 of fall quarter. And I highly recommend you join that before classes begin. So I just want to say you can find this all on our website. This is a lot right now, but we hope that you'll come join us. We also wanted to mention, we don't have a slide on this, but that the Teaching and Learning Commons also has support for you in your writing as a graduate student. And so you can learn more about that with the Writing Hub. And I wanted to hand it back to Minju real quick about that as well.
Thank you, Erin. I found the Writing Hub really helpful with my academic writing. You can actually book one-to-one consultations with the writing consultants to get feedback on your writing, such as a short abstract from a conference proceeding or a few pages of your dissertation chapter. I think getting some friendly feedback from a peer writer who is also studying at UCSD and also knows more about writing really helped me think about how to write in English and how to be an effective communicator as a writer. There are also writing workshops on how to write teaching philosophy statement for the job market. There are also writing retreat groups where you gather in a quiet space with other people regularly so that you have some accountability. If you're interested, there are more classes at the UCSD Extension on writing and speaking, and sometimes there are vouchers or discounts available.
And with that, that's the end of our section, but we just wanted to say we are really excited to work with you. We hope we get the chance to see you in our workshops and our classes. Whether or not you're in the communication for teaching class or not, I hope you get a chance to work with Sarah because she's phenomenal and you can't ask for a better person to be working with. And I hope I get to meet you too. So welcome, and we're really excited to work with you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Okay, so we just have a few additional reminders before we transition to our open question and answer. So if you do have a question, now is the time. Please go ahead and submit those. I know that we have a couple in there already, and we will get to those. But first, I just want to make you aware of some additional resources meant to support you in your transition to UC San Diego. So one of which being our welcome guide. So our welcome guide is an easy checklist, a little bit more digestible in terms of the way the information is presented. And it really has dedicated checklists for when you need the information. So before you start classes, preparing for arrival, and then upon arrival. So I'd highly recommend taking a peek at our welcome guide and making sure that you're completing all of those steps in due time. Another guide is our Surf Check Coming to UC San Diego guide. So this guide was actually created for students by students, and it's dedicated to answer all the frequently asked questions that many international students have when they transition to either life in the US or life at UC San Diego. So for example, how should I arrange transportation from the airport to campus? How do I set up a bank account? How do I set up a phone account? All these things that are a part of your transition, but may not be covered in a more academic setting. And so this is a great resource, and we highly recommend folks check it out. Oops. Another program that I think a lot of our students find really helpful is our Grad Pals program. So this is meant for incoming international students, and it's a great resource where incoming international students get paired with current international graduate students at UC San Diego, and most commonly matched within your same department. So this is a great way to kind of already have someone that you can start to ask questions to of, how do I find maybe different instructional assistant opportunities? How can I really network? Who is the grad coordinator for our department? All of those questions are so real, and it can vary by department. And sometimes you don't necessarily know the faculty yet, but having a peer that you can ask those questions to can be so helpful. So I highly recommend that you check out our Grad Pal program and sign up as an incoming mentee. Some of our other signature programs, you can take a peek at iprograms.ucsd.edu. So we have monthly programs such as our global coffee hour, our game night, our crafting. This is really meant to create a space for folks to just come, connect, hang out, really just to foster a sense of belonging, hopefully in your new home away from home for the next however long. We have additional programs such as English in Action. That's our English conversation program. So if you would like to practice your English skills, that's a great place to do so conversationally. Triton Trekkers is our collaboration with Outback Adventures, where we host different trips to explore our beautiful backyard of San Diego. So whether that be kayaking La Jolla Cove or climbing Mission Gorge or hiking Potato Chip Rock or learning how to surf, there's a lot of different fun trips that you can do where we really want to encourage you to explore San Diego, even if you don't have maybe a car yourself. And then finally, our iEvents calendar. So this is a live calendar that's continually populated by our office, as well as other offices here on campus and student organization, primarily featuring events that either have a global focus or are targeting an international community. So I know many students will bookmark this page, and whenever they're wondering what's happening, what should I do this weekend, what's going on this week, they might check out iEvents to see. And then finally, if you want a snapshot into what student life is like at UC San Diego, a great way to do that is through our Instagram. So Instagram is a really common social media platform in the US. Many folks are on Instagram. Not only UC San Diego students, but also departments as well. So our Instagram, we really like to take a sneak peek into student life at UC San Diego, specifically through the lens of international students. So if you want to start to maybe envision yourself at UC San Diego, we would love for you to follow, and then we can kind of feature different things and give you a preview into what your next few years might look like. Okay, so some important deadlines and reminders. There are two things that you can begin doing even right now. So one of which being requesting your visa documents from our office. Remember, that's iservices.ucsd.edu. That's where you can request your Form I-20 or DS 2019. Additionally, you can start to apply for on-campus housing. So previously, we have hosted a pre-arrival webinar on housing options for graduate students. So that is one thing that you can begin doing right away. Do note that in mid-May, that's where Housing, Dining, and Hospitality, or HDH, starts to begin to send out those housing contracts. Now, while they start to send it out in mid-May, please make note that they only send out 60 days prior to your requested move-in date. So if you do have a requested move-in date of later in the summer, let's say September, you may not receive a housing offer until 60 days prior to that date. In July is the deadline to submit a lot of those health immunization requirements. So we also had a pre-arrival webinar on health insurance and health immunization requirements. July 14th, I think, is the date for a lot of those. But you can always visit studenthealth.ucsd.edu for more clarification. And September is a very exciting month. So it's often where we get to meet you all face to face at international orientation. So it's move-in and check-in and lots of good things. And if you would like a sneak peek of that, feel free to check out iorientation.ucsd.edu. Okay, and finally, we do have just a few more pre-arrival webinars. So next week, we will feature student life and getting involved on campus. This is where we'll actually have a panel of current international graduate students at UC San Diego who can talk about how they kind of have navigated UC San Diego, what they have found most helpful, and just kind of all the other things that make up your life here outside of maybe academics. In April, we'll have a finances and student accounts webinar, as well as a campus safety. And in May, we'll have a getting set up in the US. That's our Surf Check Live. So covering topics like arranging transportation from the airport or setting up a phone account or setting up a bank account, things like that. And then in May, we'll also talk about transferring your CBIS record. So if you are currently studying in the US at an institution and you would like to transfer your CBIS record to UC San Diego, please join us on May 8th. Again, all webinars will be recorded and posted to inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. This is also the place that you can sign up for future webinars. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. You can sign up for upcoming webinars, as well as if you scroll down a little bit further, you can see previous webinar recordings. So if you click on Fall 2025 pre-arrival webinars, you should be able to find all of those resources there. Okay, we do have a survey. So this is really meant to, if there's any questions that you would like for us to cover of like, oh, I really would like you to go into more detail about this, or I found this really helpful, or I would love more information about that. Please give us that feedback. We're always looking to tweak these pre-arrival webinars, as well as we revert we review that survey feedback for international orientation in the fall, in September. So if there's some things that students had a lot of questions about in the spring, we'll try our best to incorporate that in the fall. All right, and with that, we will transition a little bit to our open question and answer. So I see here that we do have one question, and I think primarily for Jessica. So we have a student who is curious, can you please speak more to the ESL course when not having the speaking requirements for the ELCE?
Yeah, so if you were required to submit a test of English, such as the TOEFL or IELTS for your application, the score on the speaking section of that test may not be high enough to exempt you from the English language requirement. So if you have a score between 23 and 25 on the TOEFL or 7.5 on the IELTS, you would be eligible to just take the ELCE and show your English proficiency that way. If your score is lower than those cutoffs, so a 22 or lower on TOEFL, 6.5 or lower on IELTS, then we have you prove and we have you submit some verification that you've worked on your English fluency. And there are a variety of ways to do that. One way is to use our own extended studies ESL courses. And I think Grace posted 2 different links in the past, and I apologize because we did revamp our website recently, and one of the links is not working correctly. So I think I have the correct one for her to post to you again. Our ESL page is being updated every quarter because these classes are also on the same general quarter schedule as the university. So near the top of that website, it says, please click here for the current ESL credit flyer. That will show the courses that are coming up in spring, and then that will be updated right before the summer quarter, and it will say, click here for the ESL credit flyer, and it will show you the summer courses that we're offering. But if you scroll down on that web page, you can also see the courses that are generally offered, and if you click into one of those, you can see when it's actually going to be scheduled, which quarter it's going to run in. So some of the courses that you might take if you scroll down on that web page are called Advanced Conversation Improvement or Conversation Improvement, a course called Delivering Dynamic Presentations, a course called Mastering English Pronunciation and Improving Fluency. All of these are speaking-based courses with English as a second language teaching experts. And the guideline is usually that you should take a 3-unit course or spend around 30 hours. Some students might be required to show proof of 2 courses rather than just 1 before taking the ELCE. And in that case, you might take 2 ESL courses from extended studies. You might find a course at another local institution. San Diego has several community colleges that offer ESL courses, especially ones focused on speaking, focused on oral fluency. Or you might also supplement a course with a program that Grace mentioned before, the English in Action program. We've had several students use that as support proof to show that they've worked on their fluency. Again, the guideline is to take a 3-unit course or spend around 30 hours to qualify as 1 course. If you still have questions about this, I do have a frequently asked questions document. I think it's linked also on our ELCE website, which was one of the QR codes that I shared. So if you are looking at that and you still have questions, or if you want it directly from me, please feel free to email. It's ita-program@ucsd.edu. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica, and thanks for putting that information and contact information in the chat as well. We have another question here that says, how many MSBA students typically secure TA positions each year?
Yeah, Grace, I wanted to touch upon this because I think there might be other students who have a similar question, which is how many students in my program might get a TA position. And I just wanted to say that there's a lot of variability. Different departments have different needs when it comes to teaching assistants or instructional assistants. It could be depending on a few different things, including how many undergraduate students their program is serving, or how many courses they offer that are general courses that everyone is taking. Um, there's different factors. And so in general, my advice is to reach out to the graduate coordinator or to talk to somebody in your graduate department or program to see what the opportunities might be. So that's just kind of general advice that I have. And if any of our colleagues in the Engaged Teaching Hub has more to share, please feel free to jump in. Thanks.
All right, we'll just give one more minute or so. So if you have any last burning questions, please go ahead and submit that. But do note that we have a few more pre-roll webinars coming up. And again, if for some reason we can't answer your question today, you are always more than welcome to contact us via contact@ucsd.edu. And even if our office isn't the one to answer that question, we will connect you with the folks who can.
I
Wonderful.
can,
Yeah.
I was going to say, I just saw a question come in saying, are there any networking opportunities or resources to improve my chances of getting a TA role? That's a great question. And while I can't directly say it will improve, it will not hurt if you have shown that you are trying to become a better instructor or learning, how to be an effective instructor. So, seeking out chances to learn about teaching, completing some of the the IA teaching symposium, some of the workshops, some of the programming. And it's not that you need to go overboard with it, right? You don't need to spend hours upon hours upon hours, but also showing that you've cared enough to seek that out. That can be a great thing to share, especially if you're contacting an instructor you'd like to TA with. Or department even saying, so for instance, we offer a Foundations of Teaching badge if you complete a certain number of workshops and share a reflection. So if you've already done that, you can say, I have the Foundations of Teaching badge from the Teaching and Learning Commons. I'm really excited to apply this in a class and apply this with students. And if the faculty have any say at all, of course they're going to want someone that cares about teaching, right? They don't always have a say, but in some departments they do, in some departments they can select. So anyway, I just offer that, and then just reaching out to instructors that might be teaching courses in departments that you would like to be TAing in, and just learning more about that role, contacting those graduate coordinators, learning what it takes to get a TA position there. Because again, the departments are really the ones that are hiring the TAs. So asking them directly, showing that you care, I think are my biggest recommendations. Sarah, Minju, I don't know if you have others to add.
Thank you, Erlyn. I can share briefly. I definitely agree with what Erlyn said. And if you want to continue teaching for a similar course, I think, for example, there are courses that are really important for like methodology of each discipline, like in psychology, teaching statistics or experimental methods is really important. So for those positions, the department also wants to go back to the TA who have already done that because it requires a particular arrangement of skills. And those positions are often really well set to prepare for you to become a faculty, because those are the courses that are always part of the department. So when you're choosing courses, really ask around other teaching assistants who have TA'd for those courses to get some advice on which courses to TA for, and the courses that you can TA for maybe several quarters.
Minju, I would also love to invite you to maybe talk a little bit about external teaching positions where students can perhaps teach their own language.
Yes, thank you, Grace. So there are opportunities at UC San Diego that you can teach your own language in English. So some of them are like introductory programs to different languages. Some of them are heritage programs. For example, one of my friends was from South Korea and her native language is in South Korean. So she taught language courses that teaches Korean language. It's more, the class sessions are more often like 5-day courses with like 3 days of like learning about grammar and 2 days of speech or vice versa. But if your department does not have enough TA positions, you can always add yourself to a link that I'll be posting in the chat so that you are open and you're available for those TA positions.
And I'll just note, if you are teaching in your native language, you're not required to take the ELCE.
And I just want to echo that at UC San Diego, we really recognize like multilingualism as a strength. And so I think being able to speak multiple languages and really getting to showcase that skill set and teaching ability in that skill set, I think is really incredible and a really cool opportunity that international students are well positioned and well suited for. Jessica, we have another question here about when choosing English in action as proof of our learning. I think you might have just answered that. Is there anything you would like to verbally highlight there?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it a little more. Excuse me, sorry for my sore throat. On our website, we have more detail about the policy, and I was trying to just give an introduction, but it is quite convoluted with lots of exceptions and different exceptions, different things that might apply to individual students. So I didn't want to go too deep into it, but depending on the score that the student has submitted, TOEFL, IELTS, or Pearson test of English, they may be required to submit proof of one course. That's generally if they are right below the cutoff for the ELCE, or they might have to submit proof of 2 courses. So the student asking about if the English in Action program will qualify as that course, generally it's accepted as a second course rather than the one if you only need one.
Thank you so much. All right, so we are approaching the end of our time together today. So I want to extend another just warm thank you to all of my co-presenters for lending their time and their expertise. We are so excited to have you at UC San Diego. We're excited for you to join us both as a student as well as an instructional assistant. I think our international students have so much to offer when it comes to just creating this Research One global community here at UC San Diego. So we're so excited to have you, and we hope to have you join us at a next session. All right, take care, everyone.